Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Botch Pit. I'm Chris, Librarian of the Pit, and today I'm here to talk about what may be the most divisive clan in not just the 5th edition of Vampire the Masquerade, but in possibly all iterations of Vampire in general. We're here to talk about the Tremere, a clan of kindred that stole immortality from the fangs of another. While many openly discuss their disdain for the Tremere, or Warlocks, you can't deny that these shifty sons of bitches were just way ahead of the curve. Really though, think about it. Every vampire is a thief, a leech, a sauropod society that constantly takes and gives nothing at all back. Sure, you can claim it's in the name of, quote-unquote survival, but let's be real, each and every vampire alive in these modern nights is a parasite. No more, no less. But imagine being a parasite to parasites. What started with one greedy mortal mage, or awakened, ended with the creation of an entire new clan and the near eradication of another. Now in the modern knights, the Tremere are potentially the most prepared for change, with their extremely flexible and adaptive blood magics. Yeah, it all seems to be coming up Millhouse for these guys, then V5 hit. Now, the Tremere stands sundered into 3 different practicing houses of Tremere. Much of their number is overall, wiped out, and these warlocks are both in the worst and best case scenarios for the modern knights, but I'll save for that as I go on. For now, let's start a little bit at the beginning. An awakened hunger. Let's get this out of the way. Aging sucks. And when I say it sucks, that's quite safely a blanket comment. It's not that great for anyone. The back aches, joint pain, hair thing, and a general loss of exuberance. It blows. Now think about this. Though I said aging sucks for everyone, imagine how someone who is quite old by number, but hasn't been aging quickly, would feel experiencing this shocking change. An awakened mage by the name of Tremere, along with a few of his ilk, were experiencing just this world-rattling change. These mages from House Tremere were actually members of a mage tradition called the Order of Hermes, a sect of hermetical and gnostic bookworm nerd mages who come off as nerds in a line of nerds, so think about that. Actually, it's not even that he was just a member of the Order of Hermes. Tremere was one of the founding members of the Order of Hermes. Now, I need to give a quick explanation of something. In the world of darkness, magic, true magic, is the ability to understand and alter reality itself, with reality being defined by what people believe is and is not possible. Long have the awakened traditions been pushing against this, fighting off the sterilization of imagination and potential. The awakened have long been fighting their own faction, known as the Technocracy, at the time known as the Order of Reason, and long story short, the awakened traditions were losing even back then. Shit, they're losing now, but they had just started losing back then, so it was kind of new to them. And what that meant was that magic as the awakened knew it was dying, and now so were they. Their spells, potions, and means of life, seemingly eternal, were losing their potency due to consensus reality, while Tremere and his crew were hearing none of that shit. Tremere was an 18th century Romanian, and as many Romanians apparently, the thought of kicking the bucket was not high on the agenda. So, as mages and vampires both tend to do, our boy Tremere started scheming. While subject to massive hubris like any other good mage, Tremere was not foolish. Unlocking the secrets to true immortality were too much for any one man to do, so he began recruiting in secret from his own house in the Order of Hermes. Now, Tremere had 7 disciples, but one stood out from the rest, Gotrix, or the Betrayer. Tremere had rescued him from the stakes just before the end of the first millennium. Also a fun fact, at some point Tremere and Gotrix became lovers, sharing a bed along with all their scandalous schemes and secrets too. And when the time for, to search for immortality came along, the project was initially handed over to this guy. And we'll see how that turns out. Well, but I can say at least regarding that project, he slayed it, because Gotrix was the mastermind behind the creation of the ritual usurpation. Usurping. Regardless, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but either way, this dude's the one who figured out how to steal that life from, the Kindred. Now, in a ritual that saw thousands of mortals butchered along with a couple of hundred Kindred, Tremere and his 7 were left unconscious, and then quite dead. They awoke to their new condition as Kindred, their connections to true magic, their avatars, shattered. While momentarily at a loss, they knew that in a sense they were as they had always been, scholars and seekers of the occult. And though they were weak, a new clan had emerged. Now, it's also, you gotta be fair, vampires are kind of assholes in general, so these new young kindred, these upstarts, were not opened in with open arms. Tremere was seen as weak-blooded, and with such a low count of vampires under their belt, they seemed far closer to being a bloodline than a clan. So, once more, the former mages, now Kindred, of Clan Tremere began scheming again. They had already been slowly siring and replacing the mages of House Tremere with their tainted touch, replacing them with vampires and shrouding themselves in their sanctums to remain, occulted away in private. Also during this time, they had been experimenting with the Vitae, only to discover that with fresh blood they found a way to mirror their old magics in a damned mockery of ritual. Working with the blood, they could work their will again, though in far more mundane means. However, the fact that Paradox, the reality-enforcing will of the cosmos that affects Mage the Ascension, it seemed to ignore their vampiric power. They could now work without having to deal with, Papa Paradox smacking them in the face every time they did something that reality thought was bullshit. So, no longer did they have to fear offending what people consider reality. And just, let's talk about the fact that they have that mirrored ability with the blood. We're going to talk for a second about blood sorcery and dark thaumaturgy. In Vampire the 5th edition, the Tremere have 3 disciplines available to them at the start. Auspex, Dominate, and Blood Sorcery. And let's be real, if we're talking Tremere, you're here for the Blood Sorcery anyway. Ironically, that's probably the only leverage they had for quite some time that allowed them to even fucking survive in Kindred society. We all know it's not their winning personality and charm after all. So after losing their connections to awakened magic, the Tremere instead found themselves with the curious ability to not just use their own blood power, as much the other Kindred do, but also with means to use others' blood to work their will upon the world, free of paradox. While unable to prove it, they do in fact claim to be the creators of blood sorcery, only really competing with the Banu Hakim, because they have a form of blood sorcery that's called Quietus, and they've existed well before Tremere. But again, we're splitting hairs. To show how different blood sorcery is, unlike normal disciplines which are carried down through the blood sorcery has to be taught. You can't just kind of inherit that. So also, unlike learning normal disciplines, blood sorcery unlocks rituals in tandem based on the learning of the blood sorcery. No, they're not free, it costs experience and training, but the ability to have so many versatile and mysterious abilities at the hands of even a neonate is quite chilling to the other clans, and it shows them the value of having a member of Clan Tremere under their employ. And despite traditions, more than once has a Banu Hakim, or Tremere, sought one another out to learn the secrets of one another's similar power-imbued clan. If you have any doubt, simply hop to page 274 in the core rulebook and check out the amount of blood rituals available. These may be the most powerful kindred of all if one were to measure in potential and nothing else. As you'll see, however, there are plenty more factors one must consider when discussing what power is, and how often you can lose that power when potential just becomes unrealized. A stolen future, a future stolen. Unsurprisingly to anyone, Tremere found that having life unending still just wasn't enough. Discontent with their already accumulating power and having long been cast out of the Order of Hermes, and at war with them, Tremere and Goatrix were already making moves to solidify their power within the structure of the vampires. See, here's the thing the Kindred keep forgetting about the Tremere. They're not like them. They sought out this immortal state of being through education, study, willpower, and audacity, and they had not nearly hit their apex. Remember how I mentioned all that legwork and researching they did? Well, that all culminated when in 1133 CE, Tremere caught up with the long-torpid body of Saulot, an antediluvian that had long ago sought out Golconda, a transcendence of vampire condition. After much scrying and hunting, Tremere and a group of his most loyal fell upon the sleeping and unguarded ancient vampire and drank him dry of both blood and soul. Here's another surprise, though. This was a terrible idea, and we'll get back to that. Now fueled by the blood of a legitimate antediluvian, the Tremere launched a smear campaign against the remaining children of Saulot and reintroduced themselves to the Kindred, now as a clan of power and influence. Always wanted to take advantage of current circumstance in favor of loyalty, the Kindred begrudgingly and fearfully allowed the Tremere in, now as a full-fledged clan of vampires. While this is all well and good, time marched on. In time, Tremere himself entered torpor and set Goatrix to task while he was slumbering. But not one to not take advantage of himself, Goatrix began usurping Tremere's power and making his own little backdeal bullshit going around while, his dad was sleeping. And he started trying to take more power and influence for himself. However, when Tremere awoke during his time frame between the sleep and heard the news, Goatrix ran his ass and just completely got the hell out of the Camarilla and away from Tremere himself, seeking refuge and influence in the group of radical kindred known as the Sabbat. And they found House Goatrix within, bringing this the Tremere attribute into being. And they still remain to this day. We'll touch more on that in a little bit. For a long time, there was a cold war between the Tremere, the Order of Hermes, and the group of Sabbat vampires known as Tzimisce. See, when the Tremere had first stolen that power of vampirism, it was Tzimisce vampires that they had stolen it from. And while they were both practitioners of different types of blood magic, neither believed there was room enough for the two of them. And for quite some time, this fight raged on as if it was, meant to be. And then shit started getting worse, because something was wrong with Tremere. You see, after that diablerization of Saulot, he was acting out of sorts, conflicted, erratic, all things the former mage and clan founder typically never was. And that was when he entered that torpor. You see, what really only he knew was that when he had pulled Saulot's vitae and soul from his body, the soul was far less inclined to leave than Tremere expected. He found himself at odds with the antediluvian soul, will against will, and Tremere knew there was no way he was going to win this war for the body. So for some reason during this fight, Tremere's body warped and changed, taking the form of a massive white worm with 3 eyes. This horrific creature was held in the sub-basements deep under the main Tremere chantry, or base, housed in Vienna and taken care of by Etrius, one of Tremere's other 7 and, his 7 guys that were with him from minute 1, and a bitter rival to Goetrix. Then, in 1998, the fight was just over. Tremere's soul was expelled and he managed to place himself within Etrius. Using his body, Etrius, he made his way down to Mexico, and in 1999, he manipulated Goetrix into opening himself up for possession. After doing so, Tremere, now masquerading as Goetrix, sacrificed all of the existing Tremere attribute of House Goetrix in a ritual that brought him back to 3rd generation status. And even to this day, Tremere, what he did is... Oh, I'll get to that, but even to this day, Tremere is wearing the skin of Goetrix, guiding the Tremere attribute in the Sabbat. The house is totally unaware of this, and they still think that this is just regular Goetrix partying on and doing his thing. And I also want to point out that when he took over Goetrix's body, he punted his soul into a mirror. Nothing has been said further about that regarding if he took the mirror or if he threw it into the sea or anything. All we know is that his ass is in a mirror, and that's way worse luck than breaking one. So, moving on. From Final Nights to these modern nights. For those familiar, you may notice that many of the things written above were all signs of Gehenna or the Final Nights. However, as this is V5, those events never happened. The end doesn't come, and instead many of these milestone happenings only serve to spread chaos and problems. It also makes it really hard to hide when we live in an open information world. The Tremere, numerous and well-informed, were the easiest to spot when in 2004 SchreckNet was breached and the Masquerade was undone and quiet among those in the know. The world's governments largely came together and finally started listening to what the Church, or Society of Leopold specifically, had been saying since they had been born with mouths. However, knowing the vampires have eyes and ears everywhere, the governments, the world, they actually keep this secret closely guarded. The last thing the world needs is a panic after all, and they have no idea exactly how many vampires there are. Instead, this war is waged in secret, and the first shot across the bow was the near eradication and sundering of the Tremere. The end of the beginning. 2008, Vienna, Austria. First Light, a joint NSA-CIA venture, has identified that the Vienna Chantry exists, and to the best of their knowledge, believe this to be the headquarters of bloodsuckers all over the world. A coordinated operation by US SOCOM and Vatican ESOG, along with Society of Leopold and Brazilian Monster Hunter killer teams, lead their largest operation to date on the Chantry. It is not left standing. Drone strikes, relic-based weaponry, and good old foot-based assault make short work of it, and throughout the day, many similar assaults are launched all over the globe, covering these events as counter-terror operations. Good thing nothing like that could ever happen in real life, right? Okay, uncomfortable laughter carrying on. As they make their way through the rubble and carnage, the hunters take stock of everything and anything left behind. While the destruction is massive, many, many tomes are seized, relics taken, and secrets unveiled to the mortals sifting through it all. And going through the insane amount of evidence as they go along is just... it's not good for the vampires at all. And these are people willing to share information with one another. And they find many, many things that could be dangerous to the Kindred. What may make this all the more horrifying is what they found when they got to the lowest of depths, where Tremere had been held so long ago and kept, where he had been in his grotesque vicissitude morphed self. The horrifying find? Nothing. They find nothing whatsoever in that chamber where that worm horror that is now an antediluvian was housed. And what that means for the rest of the mortals and beings in the world of darkness, well, time will tell that tale. For now, we have other matters to discuss, namely, the total fracturing of the Tremere. A house divided. With First Light acting on their information in the felling of the Vienna chantry, the Clan Tremere found themselves in a very interesting situation. Between the beckoning and the destruction of Vienna, the Clan of Tremere had lost the vast majority of their older brethren, with them either dead or heading to the Middle East in some hypnotic trance to fight people. These younger kindred left behind were not nearly the same as many of those that came before. Often sired from awakened mages or occult-seeking hermetics, the Tremere found themselves able to sire from any practical walk of life they wanted to for the first time. Also, their old bane, being unable to blood bond, has been destroyed along with the destruction of the chantry. They can now bond mortals, though it takes more time and blood. Unfortunately, though they can still be bloodbound by other vampires, they still can't bind vampires themselves. So you'd think these vampires would be scattered and free, living their best on lives at this point. They have no more babysitters. They have no more people watching every move they make the same way. However, these are Tremere, so of course structure still had to make its way to the foundation of the clan. Now no longer identifying strictly as Clan Tremere, they now refer to themselves based on one of three major houses to come out of the destruction of Vienna. The first is Gasp House Tremere. These warlocks stick mostly to the same ways as before, maintaining a traditionalist stance. However, after the toll taken after Vienna and the apparent failure of the Camarilla to protect them, this house claims no allegiance to the large sect, considering themselves independent if not anarch. This house favors the older ways, and even has rules as far as feeding. Rule number 1 is never drain the vessel dry, because if they die, you can't use them again. Rule number 2, never embrace without permission from the Council of Seven, the leaders of the House Tremere. Rule number 3, keep a quart of their blood separate for further experimentation and drop it off at the closest chantry. And then number 4 is get the memory of you feeding from them removed, even if you have to get help from a senior member to do it. So yeah, you could say this house micromanages a little bit. No wonder they crave change so much. The next house, House Karna, or Blood Witches, has become one of my favorites now, and to be honest, I see a little of the Circle of the Crone Vampires or Vampire the Requiem in these ones. Many consider these kindred as witches burnt at the stake from long ago returned, full of the kind of determination that only comes from mastering a power once used to kill you. They are, as a majority, often female, and looking for fellow sisters to join them in their missions for vengeance and blood in these nights, and find support more and more in high supply. Now when it comes to House Karna, I like to think of the lady in red from Game of Thrones or the vampiric daughters from Resident Evil Village for theme and art design. These ladies came from the mud and dirt to bring their blood sorcery against their enemies. And with the new openness of the clan, one can't help but pity those that have turned this house's attention onto themselves. Lastly, but not nearly least, we have House Goatrix. As far as the schism-driven foundation of the clan now, this is technically the oldest house of the clan. They've been with the Sabbat since Goatrix fled his betrayed teacher and lover and sought refuge with the Sabbat, in turn for teaching his new children the blood sorcery rituals, that he had already brought with him from Tremere. But this is the Sabbat, and the Tremere attribute have another major thing up their sleeve which none of the other houses have, and that is the blood sorcery known as dark thaumaturgy. Having long had an infernalist aspect to their sect, the Sabbat assisted Goatrix in doing something that almost every vampire or awakened mage always wanted to do, but certainly never had the full hubris to do, which is confer with demons. Many logically assumed that when Tremere attribute were slain in Mexico that it was due to the infernalist nature of the house, but no, it was their progenitor. The very same progenitor pretending to be Goatrix, and is laughingly rebuilding House Goatrix in the sect of the Sabbat. Now, unknowingly to the sect, Tremere himself is calling the shots playing boss bitch to these fang divas. Nobody knows what his plans are, or that he's planning at all. The Tremere clan as a whole believed he perished in Vienna, and here's a scary thought. Look at all of this drama that Tremere caused, and this dude is still kicking. And now he has access to dark thaumaturgy for the first time. Hard times to be certain. So, while the clan is fractured, it definitely disagrees with their ideologies one-on-one. They still put clan before house or sect when it comes to how they deal with one another, and their creed is unchanged as a clan. Master the secrets of eternity and keep them away from the eyes of the ignorant and unworthy. And one final defiant middle finger to everything they stood for as awakened mortal mages once upon a time. In closing, The Tremere as a clan and order has long been an interesting group, and though many may not care for some changes that the 5th edition has made, I have to admit the direction they're taking with the Warlocks is a really strong one. Taking one pompous clan and turning them into 3 houses not only gives them a whole new dynamic, but also a whole new direction. They seek now to lead by serving, holding slightly less thrones of leadership these nights than the Nosferatu. For a long time, players had the main complaint that the Tremere felt bland or boring, with a very base archetype. Now with the beckoning in different houses, primarily the House Karna, the Warlocks are poised to be an invigorating force for these modern knights. I'm the Librarian, and this has been our guide to the Tremere. We hope that this has been helpful and enjoyable. If so, please like, subscribe, and share, and join us in our free Discord, where we have someone there to talk about all this stuff like almost 24/7 at this point with over 300 members. And again, it's free because charging to be in a Discord is for cucks, and that's pretty crappy. So, I just want to take one more second and deviate from my script. I'm kind of going to go impromptu with this, and I don't really know if the other Botch Pit members will even listen to this. But I just need to say that I know it's been a while between guides, and I personally appreciate it on my end, and everything's been going on. But I really want to point out how much I appreciate my brothers in the pit, like Lenny, Nick, Jura. Again, I don't even know if you guys are listening to this, but I love you guys a lot, and I can't put into words how much I appreciate everything you've done for me and how you've been with me. And yeah, it's been a bit of a rough patch, and if everybody was lucky to have the brothers that I have, maybe more people would make it through them. So, I love you guys, thank you. And to all of our fans, followers, and friends, have a great night wherever you are, above or below, and thank you.